honestly, it's like the thing that separates the really big business owners from small business owners is consistency. And so I find that really interesting. And it means that, unsurprisingly, the vast majority of business owners that are on here are committed to the outcome and not the process. And I can promise you the reason that you will get outcompeted by people who might be doing less than you right now are the ones who are married to the process. And it's a very overused thing that gets stated, but very difficult to internalize. But if you just fall in love with the fact that you're going to make this much content, you're going to do this much outreach, like the work is the goal, not the output from the work. So the inputs become the goal. And whether you did the inputs to the best of your ability is whether or not you reach them. Happy Monday. Happy Nicorette Monday. I don't know what brand you guys use, but for me, actually, I think I use Habitrol. I think I use an off-brand. Michael?
Tried Amazon's own brand.
You used it?
Yeah.
How you feeling with it? You like it?
It's same as all the others.
Yeah, it's just nicotine. Just generic. What's up, Max? What's up, iPhone 10? What's up, Denisa? Wow, coach, that is very long. Kevin, what's up? Marcel, Rich, Blazej, Alex, Harut, you're always on here, man. What's up? Justin, Ben, Diraj, Rob, Safe. All right. So as we kick this puppy off of A's and Q's and Q's and A's, I would like to preface with looking at the legendary all-time, and by all-time I mean just this month, leaderboard. So let's rock and roll inside. By the way, if you guys are going to ask questions, preguntas, which is Espanol for questions, or if you want the French, it's question.
Wow.
Then hit up the Q&A box. It's a new feature on Zoom. Very exciting. And for those of you who do Q&A calls using Zoom, you're welcome. All right, so let's dive in. Let's make the monkey dance. All right, so number one, we got Jamie C, which I'm actually very excited about. She has narrowly missed it last 2 months, and she is leading the pack with 29,000 in new MRR. She's been consistent, which is great. Actually, Jamie, I'm curious how you're doing on the all-time board. Man, 90. Dude, the top, there's a very tight little band right here. She gets another, 6, 7K. She might be able to take the second slot, which is exciting. So you got School Mentors at 22, Tim at 18, Nate at 17.7, Ruben 16, Steven 16, Elmer 15. All right, so if this has been one of those months where you're like, man, should I push it into high gear? This might be like, I think the March games. March game was a little lower. So, kind of, it feels like it oscillates sometimes. It's like everyone blows their goodwill nut, and then they forget that there's another month, because that's the crazy thing about business, is that you do it every single month, which I think is actually a side note of something that I've been thinking about, which I may start my monologue with, and then we will go into A's and Q's. So one thing that I have noticed, and Sam and I have talked about this, is that if you look at the leaderboard, what I have noticed is this very bad habit, and it's among the people who win the games. And so basically they win the games and then they just stop trying. And so they hit 40,000 a month or $50,000 a month, and then they just stop selling. And honestly, it's like the thing that separates the really big business owners from small business owners is consistency. Is like, it's funny because the money itself is less reinforcing than the competition, which I find hilarious. I mean, it's true, obviously, from people's behavior. They want the status more than they want the money. But it's usually because like you just don't realize the game beyond the game, which is like the whole point is to stack the money so that you can get the big status outside of the games, right? And so I find that really interesting. And it means that, unsurprisingly, the vast majority of business owners that are on here are committed to the outcome and not the process. And I can promise you the reason that you will get outcompeted by people who might be doing less than you right now are the ones who are married to the process. And it's a very overused thing that gets stated, but very difficult to internalize. But if you just fall in love with the fact that you're going to make this much content, you're going to do this much outreach, like the work is the goal, not the output from the work. So the inputs become the goal. And whether you did the inputs to the best of your ability is whether or not you reach them. And so I hope that Jamie C wins. And I think a reason that I like that is because she has consistently been producing month after month after month. And so I care very little whether she wins the games, but I care a lot about whether she can rise up the leaderboards and win the whole thing. I'd rather she never win the games and add, well, it'd be hard at her current pace not to win the game. She's had 2 tough games in a row where she had like 38,000, and that was just not enough to make the boards. But I would rather someone like her, maybe it's someone on here, make 15,000 a month, know they can retain those customers and do it every single month, never make the school games, but at the end of the year, be number 1 in the all-time leaderboards. And so if I can give one theme, one thematic thing that I hope you take from this call, and I'll answer all the Q's and A's and stuff, is figure out what the inputs are for growing your business. And most of the inputs in this business are going to be related to advertising, most of them, because you have traffic, you have conversion, you have pricing, and you have churn. Those are the levers of this business. And pricing, you pretty much just pick and that's done. Conversion, you fix one time, you do little tweaks, but for the most part, the page remains more or less the same. And so the only inputs in the system are going to be the things that you put on the back end inside the community to reduce churn, and things on the front end that you do to get more people in there. And I want to tell you one story, and then I will go to the A's and Q's. Very good friend of mine had a very, very successful newsletter. And I'll say, like, when I say very, very successful, I'll give you scales, probably 500,000 a month. All right. So print newsletter, old school marketer. And I was talking to him about it. And he said, I said, what was your churn on that? And he was like, oh, it was about 15%. And I was like, okay, that's pretty good for like a newsletter offer. It was high ticket. It was $200 or $300 a month. I think it's, sorry, $300 or $400 a month. So it was an expensive newsletter targeted for business owners. And I was a reader of the newsletter and I was like, why'd you stop this thing? I loved it. It was awesome. And he said, oh, I stopped it because, I'm an entrepreneur in it. I got bored with it because it just made money and it was really easy. So I just decided to start something really hard and lose all my money. And so so going back to the churn, I said, okay, so you're 15%. I said, what did you do to reduce churn? He said, well, I can tell you all the things that I did that didn't reduce churn. And I was like, well, that works. He said, churn, was at its absolute lowest when I only had two things in my deliverable. They had a call once a month, and they had a newsletter. That was it. He said, then I went from once a month to once a week. And then I added 2 a week. I added Facebook Fridays where I talk about ads. And then I would do Q&As on Mondays. And then I added in 2 or 3 other things inside of the community. And the more things he added, the more churn increased. And so I just think that there's just a huge lesson in clarity and simplicity here in the messaging and also your deliverable. Is that because you get bored has nothing to do with your customers getting bored. And a lot of times reduction of churn is about simplicity and and about activation, getting someone to consume it rather than having more things for them to consume. I would rather increase the likelihood that they consume 100% of my stuff than try and give them more things to consume. And so that was my little lesson, my little takeaway that I'll share with you guys. He had 2 things and he was charging $400 a month. And so some of you guys are mispriced for sure, but you just want to make sure that the thing that you actually give, that they actually consume is really good. I'd rather you just spend one whole month making one really valuable thing that they're like, this is worth $2,000, and then they stay. So that is my TLDR for this. But the inputs that you have will be, what do I make that's exceptional on the back end and try and put all my effort in getting to consume it. And then everything else of my time goes towards advertising. And so if you look at your day and you did not let more people know about your stuff, you will stop making money. And that is what many of the people who win the games do because they're committed to the outcome, not the inputs. All right, let's do A's and Q's.
Click the Q&A button at the bottom. You can sort by most upvotes.
Oh, upvotes. Okay, sort. Okay, most recent. Most upvotes. Here we go. Got it.
And if
Most
anybody
upvotes.
wants a question answered, just click the plus button, the like
All right.
button.
Well, it looks like Garrett or Jarrett, not sure, has the first one. Hello, Alex. Is it possible to sell or exit a business community that is built on Skool? Thank you. I see no reason why it wouldn't be possible to exit a community like this. The big thing that will matter is the marketing system. And this is why the inputs are so important, is the marketing system that ties to the revenue. So fundamentally, when you buy a business or you sell a business, you're selling an annuity, which is just a fancy word for an annual recurring revenue stream. And so the buyer wants to get a return on that revenue stream, and then they're going to add a discount, which is applied based on risk. And so it's how likely is it that this business will continue to run and or grow and remain profitable for the foreseeable future. And if they buy your community and say, well, I think this thing, the average customer stays 3 months and I don't know how long, how they even get customers, then you might sell for 25% of your annual revenue, right? Which would be like kind of a small exit. If you could prove that people stayed for a year and then you had a really reliable way of getting people in and there was no risk associated and it was you had a team of VAs that does outbound, then you'd be like, okay. Or I have a network of 20 influencer pages that I drive traffic from, whatever it is, that it's not one itis, it's not one source. You have a lot of different streams that you have that are reliable. Then it becomes a much more valuable thing. And so everything that has to do with selling a business is how much of it is an asset versus a job, right? As in like, what does the person who's buying it have to do? If they have to do something, it immediately goes down in value. Like if I can just buy this asset and it kicks off cash, which is like when you buy a building, they're really valuable because they kick off cash. You don't have to do a lot. Now, sure, there's stuff you have to do, but there's people that are already in place when you buy an asset like that. And so that is fundamentally what goes into it. So any asset is sellable if it has the characteristics of a sellable business. Okay.
This clip was taken inside of the Skool Games, which is literally free to join. So if you want to talk to AlexHormozi live every week, then click the link in the description and join right now.
54.1% of people who start a paid community in Skool make money. Yes, you heard that right.